for joining our next lesson in our nutrition education program series. Today we have Renelle Finke with us, and she's going to talk to us about fixing it safe.
Thank you, Stephanie. So let's talk about food safety today and why it's so important. Because it doesn't sound like a super interesting topic, but it's so important because in the US, every year 48 million people suffer from a foodborne illness. That's a lot of people. And the number one reason why they contract a foodborne illness is because of improper hand washing. So that's why with these facts, it's so important to focus on food safety and fixing your food safely, right? So we're going to focus on 4 key things when we talk about food safety. That's clean, separate, cook, and chill. So let's start with that first one of clean. So when we think of clean, what do you think of in the kitchen? Do you think of surfaces?
Maybe more of my food.
Your food, yeah, you want your food to be clean. Do you know the number one thing I think about is my hands? Because we talked about improper hand washing being the number one cause of those foodborne illnesses. So we want to talk about how to properly wash our hands, right? What we need to do, the steps we need to take, and the things that are going to help us to have clean hands. So first, I'm going to show you guys how to wash your hands safely and effectively. So if you'll follow me back here to the sink, we always want to start with warm water. So you're going to turn your water on. You want to get your hands wet. And you want to use soap. So you can use bar soap. You can use soap out of a soap dispenser. Just make sure it's soap. So it's important though, we can't just 2 seconds, rinse our hands off. We need to wash our hands for 15 to 20 seconds to make sure that we're killing all the bacteria and the germs. So if we just do maybe the palms of our hands, no, we got to get everything. So palms of our hands, tops, our fingers in between. My kids sing top and bottom, top and bottom. They do recommend that you can sing the ABCs to take the correct length of time. I recommend singing it under your breath or singing it to yourself, especially if you're in public. People might think you're kind of silly. So you want to focus on your fingers and your fingernails too. There's a lot of bacteria and germs that can harbor there. So make sure you've gotten all around. You can even go up a little bit on your wrist. All right, so we've gotten our hands nice and clean. That's the lather part. And now we're going to rinse them off. So just run them under the water. All right, so we've got our hands rinsed. Now we're going to dry them off. So grab your paper towel. And if you'll notice, I didn't turn the water off right away. Do you have any idea why I wouldn't have done that?
You turned it on with your dirty hand.
Correct. That is right. Awesome job. So I don't want to touch that again with just my bare hands because I turned that on with my dirty hands. So I might have had extra germs and dirt on there. So I want to wait, dry my hands off really well. And then I'm going to turn that water off. And then I'm ready to throw this away. All right. So we've washed our hands. Now, what would you do if you didn't have access to soap and water so you couldn't wash your hands?
Is hand sanitizer appropriate?
Yes. Hand sanitizer is the second best option because the alcohol in it does kill the germs. It's still not as appropriate or to be used completely in the place of hand washing, but it is another viable option. So you can just use hand sanitizer that you get at the store. And I just usually do one good pump and then rub it all around. And you want to do the same thing as you did when you washed your hands because you want to get the germs off of your entire hand. So I just usually do in between my fingers, up my wrist. And you know what? Do you think now that it's on there, is it okay? Can I just start touching things or should I let it dry?
Probably dry first.
Yes, let it dry because you definitely don't want to touch anything because you could stick to it or transfer that. So make sure it's all over your hands and then let it dry. Sometimes this is a good time to get some workout in, some movement. You know, you're trying to get your hands dry. There you go. All right, so we focused on getting our hands clean. Now let's talk about the surfaces. So do you think that just wiping them down with a rag is the best option, or do you think we should use something else?
Probably more of a sanitizing cloth.
Yes, so we can use water and soapy, or a cloth with water and soap, like we did in the sink, because we washed our hands with that soap, right? So we know that it kills bacteria. Or you can use sanitizing wipes. That is an option if you don't have that. If you don't have access to these, you can make your own bleach solution, right? So you just need a spray bottle or a bottle to contain it. You're going to use 1/4 of a teaspoon of chlorine bleach with 2 cups of water, okay? You're gonna wanna replace that weekly though. You don't wanna leave it for a long period of time because it will lose its effectiveness. So you're gonna wanna replace that weekly and store it in a dark place instead of storing it in the sunlight because that can also break it down, okay? So you're gonna want to make sure that you sanitize all of your surfaces. So your countertops, your cooking areas as well. And then also, obviously, your pots and pans, the things that you're cooking with, your bowls, your spoons, making sure you're washing those appropriately as well. That's important, okay? Do you have any questions about cleaning?
Not so far. So you're telling me, though, that I can't just take bleach from the bottle and clean the counters?
No.
Okay.
That is not a good choice because it is too strong, okay? So you need to dilute it a little bit. And once again, if you have questions, I'm gonna give you guys an awesome handout that will be linked to this presentation that you can access. And it has the recipe that you can actually make. So you'll know exactly how to do it. And it's gonna have some other awesome tips too. So if you forgot anything we talk about today, it's right here. You can reference it back.
Great.
But that's a great
Thank
question.
you.
Yes. Bleach is too strong. Yep, gotta dilute it. So, all right, so we've talked about what we're gonna use to clean, okay? So now, what's our next step? Do you remember? I said we're gonna clean and then
Separate.
separate. Awesome job, you were listening. I love it. So why would we separate our foods? Does anybody know?
Is it because some have bacteria that others shouldn't have?
Yes. Awesome job, Stephanie. So we wanna separate our foods so that they don't cross-contaminate each other, okay? Because like you said, some have bacteria that others don't have. And so not only do we want to separate those foods when we're cooking them, but we also want to separate them when we store them and when we purchase them. So when you go to the grocery store, if you think about it, when you're bagging your groceries, like if you go to Aldi's and you bag your own groceries, or you're at another store where you have someone that bags them, they oftentimes don't put the meats together with the produce or the fruits because they don't want cross-contamination. And we should honor that same thing when we get home. We should store our meats below our fruits and vegetables or other products in our refrigerator. Because sometimes those meats inadvertently will have extra juices or extra fluid that might leak out of them. And we don't want that to drip onto those other things and contaminate them. And it's the same thing. So when we're on a cutting board or a cutting surface, we want to use a separate one for those meats and those meats than we do for the vegetables as well, or other things that we're cutting up. The same with knives, or we need to sanitize them in between. So we're not cross-contaminating or transferring that bacteria from one thing to another. Awesome job. Okay. So we've covered that. Awesome, awesome. So now we're going to talk about cooking them because we've got them clean. They're ready to go. We've separated them. We're ready to cook. All right. So when we go to cook things, we need to make sure that they're cooked to the correct temperature so that once again, those bacteria that we've already talked about don't cause a foodborne illness, because there's some really yucky ones that can make you feel really sick, like salmonella and shigella and lots of other ones that are not fun. So we need to cook those meats to the correct temperature. And that's where an awesome meat thermometer comes into play. So I'm going to teach you guys a little bit about a meat thermometer and how to use them. And then we're going to talk about the temperatures that these should be. So these are really, really easy to use. They have an awesome face where you can see the dial go. And you're going to put it in the thickest part of the meat when you go to test it, okay? So the chicken breast, you're going to put it in that thickest part. If possible, this little divot right there, and I know it's probably really hard for you guys to see at home, but once you get your own meat thermometer, you can look at it and find it. You're gonna wanna try to get it in as close to that as possible. That's the little sensor. So you're gonna put it in there and you're gonna watch until that dial stops. And that's gonna tell you the temperature. So the lowest one is fish and seafood, and that's 145 degrees. Your highest will be your poultry, and that's 165 degrees due to the salmonella. So
Renelle, I can use the same thermometer then for chicken and pork and fish and steak.
You're going to want to make sure you clean it, wash it in between each use. But yeah, if you look at the dial, Stephanie, you can see all those are an option. So reheating leftovers is a big one. So everybody, I know at my house, I make lots because I want to have leftovers so I don't have to cook as often, right? So making sure you're reheating all leftovers to 165 degrees so that any bacteria that may have grown when you've stored it is eradicated. There's not going to be that bacteria, so there's a less of a chance for foodborne illness. Okay. And the same with gravies and soups, things like that. You want to heat those to a boiling as well. Okay. The other part I want to talk about is how you're going to store that. And that's the next part, is that chill part, because that's an important part too. So we've already prepared it. We've already separated it. We've already cooked it. Now we're going to talk about that chill. Okay. We have this one talks about how we're going to cook it and tells us how hot it is. This is going to tell us how cold it is. Okay. So this is a tiny little, it's itty bitty. So I know it's probably hard for you guys to see, but this is a thermometer for your refrigerator or your freezer, which is very important because that's where we store a large part of our perishable food, right? So we have the option for canned, and that can go in our pantry. But this is important because we want our refrigerator and our freezer to stay at the correct temperature so that that food stays good and is not in that danger zone. So I know it's kind of hard to see, but I'm going to show Miss Stephanie. There's 2 safe zones on here that are in little blue areas. The safe zone for our refrigerator and the safe zone for our freezer. So our freezer should be set to 0 degrees, okay, because we want those things to remain frozen. Our refrigerator is okay in between 0 and 30 degrees, all right? 0 and 40. So when we get to there, that's where we want to be. Now that danger zone where the bacteria really grow is between 40 and 140 degrees. Okay. So that's the zone where that bacteria multiplies very rapidly. I think you guys have probably all seen those graphics where it's like 1 and then it starts to bounce into 2 and then 3 and then 5 and then 20 and then it's crazy because there's so much bacteria. That's that zone where we don't want foods to stay any more than 2 hours, because that's where the bacteria multiplies the most rapidly. So that might be, you go get groceries and you bring them home in the car. So try to make that a short trip because the bacteria can multiply during that time. But
Renelle, I tend to leave my family dinner out for seconds and thirds for people to go back to get more. So I shouldn't leave it out for more than 2 hours.
Right. You want to do your best to put it away quickly, obviously, but like you said, you want your family to be able to eat. And so leaving it out for a half hour, 45 minutes is not the worst thing that, you know what I mean? You can leave it out for a short amount of time, but more than 2 hours is where that bacteria really starts to multiply and it can become dangerous. So you want to make sure you get that put away. So when you go to store those things, because obviously maybe you made a big pot of soup and you're like, okay, everybody's had their seconds, everybody's had their thirds, but I still have a really, a big pot of soup. So maybe divide that into smaller containers so it can cool off quicker when you put it in the refrigerator. Maybe a little bit more shallow containers. Obviously, you can put things into a plastic bag or something to contain them. Just make sure that they're covered when you store them in the refrigerator. Okay.
One more question for you.
Sure.
Where can I find these thermometers for my house?
You can find these really just about anywhere. In the food or the kitchen area of Walmart. I'm not sure if they have them at some of the dollar stores, but you can find them at Walmart, I believe. And sometimes you can also get them as a gift or tell someone you need one and they might say, hey, I have 2 meat thermometers because my mom got me one and I already had one. So sometimes you can get them that way, but they're great to have because they are going to tell you once again, you can monitor. And I don't check my temperature in my refrigerator every day, but sometimes it's just nice to double check and make sure, or, your freezer's acting kind of funny and stuff's not, you don't think it's all the way frozen, just stick it in there to check it so that you're certain that your food is being stored safely.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. All right. So we've talked about cleaning, washing our hands properly, sanitizing our work surfaces, making sure that we're cutting down the risk for foodborne illness. We've talked about making sure that our raw meats and our vegetables, those things are separated so we're not having that cross-contamination. We've talked about cooking items to the correct temperature, making sure that we're storing the items at the correct temperature, and then chill cooling those items down and making sure we're staying out of that danger zone. So I really challenge you guys to do this home food safety inspection. It's also going to be attached with this one just to see where you stand. I think it's always good to kind of reevaluate and say, ooh, I was missing that, or, oh, I'm doing that great. Awesome. Go me. So just do this and maybe look at how you're doing in your home so that you can make sure that you're fixing your food safely for your family.
Great. Thank you so much for teaching us about clean, separate, cook, and chill, Renelle. For more information, you can find our website at eatgathergo.org. Renelle now has another great recipe for us.
Awesome. You are so welcome. Thank you, Stephanie. I'm excited to share carver dip with you today. And today we're going to do, it's made out of sweet potatoes with just a little bit of sugar, a little bit of cinnamon, and some unsweetened applesauce. And it's a super awesome dip to take to a carry-in or even just as a snack for your kids. When you're in a hurry and they need something that's quick and nutritious in between school and a sports activity or anything like that. And I love to stick it in my lunch as just a little extra treat because it's just sweet enough to kind of be a dessert dip. So we're going to start with our sweet potatoes. And we are just going to go ahead and open this can up. And you're just going to use, I'm going to move these over so you can see a little bit better. There we go. A regular can opener and open this up. There we go. Okay, and we're going to drain this real quickly. And I just put my colander right there. Take the lid off. I'm just going to pour those into there to drain. And these are just regular sweet potatoes. And if they're in syrup, you might want to rinse them off a little bit just so there's no heavy syrup on them. And I'm just going to use my wrist again. Rinse them off with cold water. There you go. Shut that off. Drain a little bit of the water off of it. Once again, I'm going to put a bowl underneath my colander just so if there's any extra water, it doesn't leak on the floor so I don't slip and fall. All right. We're going to put those right into our big bowl. And then this is a fun activity for kiddos, just to mash them up. So I like to use a fork, or I like this tool because it has some slots, so you can use that. My kiddos love to do this. It's a great way to get them involved and to use their muscles. Say push, push, push. But it's super fun to just mush these up. You can, if you want to, use a mixer or a potato masher, whatever is easiest for you, or even just a regular fork. Whatever you have on hand in your kitchen really and truly is whatever you can use. I just use this one because it's what I have on hand. So just mush these up so they're smooth. And like I said, get those ready to go. There we go. All right. So now we're going to add some of this applesauce. And this is already a little pre-packaged one. I love this for convenience factor. I just buy the unsweetened one because we are going to put just a little bit of sugar. But honestly, this unsweetened one really complements the sweet potato. So just going to use this. There we go. Just clean that out. All right, got that in there. And then next we're going to do 1/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. And you can also add, I've had some people that told me that they added some pumpkin pie spice to it and liked that. I've only ever done the cinnamon. That's what we prefer at our house. So you can always experiment though and make it your own.
Renelle, where can I find cinnamon to purchase?
Sure. So cinnamon is one that's in the spice aisle at your grocery store. But you know what? You can also find it at like Dollar Tree or Dollar General. You can find a lot of great spices that are inexpensive, and you can do a lot with those spices. This is one, I feel like I bought this at maybe Aldi for like 98 cents. So they're a great investment because they typically last for quite a while and you can do a lot with them. Great question. I love that. Okay. So we've got our 1/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. Now we're going to do our 1 teaspoon of sugar. And this is just going to give it a little bit. And honestly, if you don't want to add the extra, you don't have to, but you can. So once again, making it your own is where it's at. I'm just going to use, and you can use other sweeteners as well. If you prefer stevia at your house or another natural sweetener, you can use those. All right. And then I'm just going to take this out of there. We're just going to stir this up. And it gets a little bit creamier. And like I said, you can serve this cold or warm. I like to heat it up, especially for like fall parties. It's really great when you heat it up a little bit and then serve it with, my kids like graham crackers or graham sticks, but you could serve it really with whatever. You can also make homemade cinnamon tortillas. So just using a tortilla shell and putting a little bit of cinnamon and sugar and water on those and then baking them, those are always great. I would recommend using whole wheat on those though, so you can get some of those whole grains into your diet. So here we go. All right, so got that. And then like I said, I typically serve mine with just some graham sticks to dip into them, or to use to dip it. And now you can enjoy a snack.
It looks wonderful. Thanks, Renelle. For more recipes, check out our website at eatgathergo.org.
Hi, I'm Renelle. Thank you with Purdue Nutrition. I'm just going to share some tips on being able to choose to move more in your daily routine and making those things happen, regardless of your ability or your skill. So, you notice I'm sitting on a chair. Oftentimes, we might not have the ability to move a lot or do a lot of things that we feel like are movement. But I want to show you how, even just sitting in a chair, you can do some movement that continues to help you gain more mobility and become stronger. So you're sitting in a chair, and make sure you're sitting where you're comfortable. You can either sit back or sit at the edge. I recommend, if you have balance problems, sitting back so that you're safer and you have that support back there. But if you're comfortable, you can also sit at the edge so that you can reach further out. So I'm just going to show you some basic things that you can do in the chair that you can continue to build that strength and that flexibility and that mobility. So I recommend starting with just some basic things like leg lifts. And you can do as many repetitions or do it as many times as you feel comfortable with. And sometimes you need to start out slow and then build your way up. And I recommend doing 5 on one side and then 5 on the other side, or how many ever that you feel you're comfortable with. If you need to hang onto your chair for stability, you can always hang onto the sides as well. Or once again, if you're sitting against the back so you have that support, you can use that as well. The same thing, I recommend going with your arms. Make sure that you're not going to hit, if you have sides on your chair, make sure that your arms are up high enough. But you can do arm circles as well. And if you choose to have more resistance, you can use cans of soup, or you can hold small things in your hands to add increased resistance. Go forwards and backwards. These are all just simple things that you can do. If you want to add more resistance, you can use resistance bands. This is just one that you can get from a therapist or at a local drugstore. These can give you more resistance, especially for your upper body. They're great. And this is a chair exercise as well. So and if you don't feel like this is enough resistance as you're pulling across and working those chest muscles, you can double this over, and it'll give you more resistance. It's much harder. These come in different colors as well as in different strengths. This is just the medium one, it's pretty basic, but you can go with lighter or heavier. So those are some things you can do. You can also put it behind you and stretch out and back. Upper body strength becomes important when you're going to get up as you age, so that you can help yourself out of the chair. It's also important when you're younger, picking up kiddos, lifting groceries, things like that. You can also, if you need more resistance, I do recommend washing this or wiping this down, because you're most likely going to put it under your feet when you're doing this one. And that's stretching, so pushing, flexing that foot. You can also push down, you're stepping. those are just a few things that you can do while seated. I recommend finding time, even if it's just 10 minutes. That's what they really recommend, is at least a 10-minute stretch so you can get your body active and get that blood pumping. It doesn't have to be all 30 minutes at one time. We do recommend 30 minutes a day for adults, once again, and 60 minutes a day for kiddos. If you say, ooh, I just don't have that time, make little snippets. You're taking your kiddos to baseball practice, walk around the field a couple times. Or you have 10 minutes where you're waiting on laundry to get done. Maybe go up and down the stairs a couple times, do some squats, do something, have a dance party with your kiddos. Be creative and find ways to make that time. Being active doesn't always have to mean going to the gym. It doesn't always have to mean lifting weights in the traditional sense. Like I said, if you have a can of soup, use a can of soup. Groceries are a great way to lift weights. Let's be realistic. How many of us take all the groceries we can fit on one arm, all those bags, so we don't have to make as many trips? It's another great way to build those biceps and triceps. So just being active and making a way to do those things even when we don't feel like we're able. So just making sure you're doing what you're comfortable with, being active for at least 30 minutes a day.